Hello, my name is Lesley Atherton, and this is my short story, Clutching at Straws. I'd always been taught that cleanliness is next to godliness, and knew without a doubt that accuracy was next to victory. With that in mind, I wrote down every word they said, knowing it may just become necessary for reference and as proof in court. My notes will no doubt become valuable tools in my defence. I'm not an innocent. I've been around, and of course I am aware that it is illegal to record a phone conversation without the participant's knowledge, but I was convinced I'd be able to get away with it. After all, surely a person who is about to be put away for a murder they did not commit is legally allowed, or even encouraged, to defend themselves, fully, in whatever way they are able, even if that meant taking shorthand notes while listening in on another extension. It was a good job I'd kept up with my shorthand skills. I was still as fast as I'd ever been, and maybe even faster than back when I was a court reporter in the good old days. My only problem was holding the phone while writing, but I had no choice. If I switched the phone to loudspeaker, the click would be heard from the other room. So I struggled, with phone shoved into the space between my cocked head and my rather painful puffy shoulder. "What do we do next, then?" a woman's voice said. I had come to hate that voice. Breathy, overtly feminine, almost girly, the voice of a woman who couldn't make any of her own decisions. A man replied and seemed to be asking questions, though I couldn't hear most of what he said. "I don't know, I really don't," said the woman. "She's a fighter, that's for sure. I don't think we could ever get her to do something she didn't want to do, unless we used extreme force." Extreme force. The people who wafted in and out of my kitchen certainly knew how to use that, as I'd been on the receiving end of it many times. I'd been pushed in and out of chairs. I'd been hurt. I'd been shouted at and belittled and forced to do what I didn't want to. But it was time for me to begin fighting back. The woman's whiny little voice had been talking for too long, and I had switched off from it, instead just watching the spirals on the wallpaper, while thinking of how, as a child, I used to play hopscotch up and down this street. I always wore a blue dress, even when it became ragged round the edges. I looked down at my current clothing: nightdress, slippers, padded dressing gown. I'd been dressed in this manner since the man and woman had first decided to keep me prisoner. "She's acquired some odd rituals too, and she's even started to drink. Her personality has changed so much," the woman said. I had begun listening once more, and only hoped I hadn't missed anything crucial. I needed to pull myself together and to stay aware. There was no way that these two were going to get the better of me. Bad habits indeed. I hadn't touched a drink for days. The only other bad habit I had was of listening on phones while conspirators plotted my downfall. But no judge would convict me based on that bad habit alone. "She's just too independent. I never know what she's going to do next. That means it's hard to plan anything. But we must do something," the girly voice simpered. "Ever since that week we spent in Bournemouth, I've known that something needs doing. The way she acted, the embarrassment, the humiliation, and she didn't care. She positively enjoyed seeing us suffer." Suddenly the doorbell rang, and a young woman entered the room from my kitchen and walked over to my front door. She began talking in a simpering, whimpering voice as she opened it up. "Put the phone down, Mum. You don't need to ring anyone. Me and Matthew are here. We're helping you. The people from hospital are here now. They're going to make you feel better." She removed the pad and pencil from my crooked hands and showed my precious notes to the man who had walked through the door with a pretend smile on his face. "Scribbles," he said. "Meaningless scribbles." He didn't know shorthand. That's why I was superior to them all. "She does it all the time," the woman said. "I'm really worried about her. My mum has always been so clever and in tune with the world, but she's so different since Dad died. Like she's living in a fantasy world all the time. No grasp on reality at all." The man nodded. "She'll be cared for. We'll do a full appraisal. Mrs. Saint has full private health care cover. There's nothing we won't do to help her, and you, her family." The man and the woman stood together holding hands and watched as three strangers accompanied me out of my home. I grabbed my pad and pen from the strangers on the way out. I didn't look at anybody. I didn't worry. I knew now that I would be safe. The murder plot had been thwarted, and my notepad would prove everything. Those strangers who had taken up residence in my home would be moved on and sent to prison, and I would be able to return to my little house to take care of my husband and my little children. They were only 6 and 9, the poor little mites, and their daddy couldn't care for them all by himself. Once I was back from the police station, everything would be all right again, back to the way it should be.